Hey, this is Yang Nguyen, and you're listening to the Emmy Wealth Builder podcast, where we celebrate incredible immigrant success stories, share proven strategies, and give you actionable steps to build your wealth, freedom, and a lasting legacy. Let's go get it. If you think that you need to grow up around real estate or have millions before you start investing, this episode will change your mind. So many immigrants start from scratch in a new country, working hard, but never really realizing that they can turn that discipline into true financial freedom. So I'm super excited to talk to Jason today. He immigrated from Taiwan at 13, built a 12-year career in the aerospace, and pivoted to real estate, switching from single family to multifamily and owning over 200 units over the Midwest. So his journey is a powerful example of how curiosity, community, and courage can completely change your wealth trajectory. So Jason, welcome. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your immigrant wealth building journey.
Thanks for the intro and thanks for having me on the show. Maybe I'll just start by talking about how this journey and pivot started. It really began in COVID, where everyone started working from home, right? And that's when I have a little bit more time to think about, okay, real estate had been on my mind for some years, but never had the chance to really dig into. And that's when I started doing single family investing out of state. And then very quickly realized that these $400, $500 cash flow a month is great. But for that to really replace a significant amount of my income, I'm going to need like 50 doors, 100 doors, right? And that's when I say, okay, buying one door at a time, not going to work, not going to scale. And that's why I looked into the multifamily part, where you put more doors under one roof, easier to manage, easier to scale in that way. And then I made a few investments as an LP, and I thought I knew what I was doing, but not really. There were a few investments that I made that I really quickly had cold feet and regretted. And that's when I joined more real estate specific communities to learn about how to acquire and operate multifamily. And that just started this whole journey and got to where I am today.
Awesome. Let's back up a little bit. You quit your W-2, right? Or are you still in your W-2?
No, I'm still working with W-2.
Okay, so you are an aerospace engineer.
Yeah.
Okay, and you live in the Bay Area, right?
Yeah, San Andreas.
So you live in an expensive market, and I'm guessing that's what prompted your journey to invest out of state at first.
Mm-hmm.
So for the audience who listening, they may be also in market where maybe locally it doesn't work out. So maybe tell us a little bit about how you first approach the out-of-state investing. A lot of things people come up is like, what if the tenants call at like 3 a.m. or a toilet thing? Like that's always the fear that somehow people have in their head. But tell the audience a little bit about how you picked your market, how you even start building your team, and what prompted that journey.
All right, that's quite a lot to unpack. I think like initially when I first picked the market, I looked at just high level metrics, like where is the population going into? Where are the jobs going? And that happened to be at the time, a lot of Sunbelt markets like Texas and Florida. So naturally, that's when a lot of attention was put into those markets. And that's when I started looking too. And I did end up buying single families in those markets. And they have been doing okay, nothing to complain about. But also I realized that everyone's looking in the same market, right? Yeah. So price is going to be pushed up. You're paying a little bit more than probably should have. It gets pretty competitive. And then that's when I said, okay, are there any other places that are quote unquote under the radar, but still have the right fundamentals? And by the right fundamentals really mean, do they have a diverse industry? Do they have diverse jobs in the market? Is the population like steady? Like it doesn't have to grow like Austin, but it cannot be declining either, right? So are they at least steadily growing? And then third, do they have a lot of climate risks? Do they have hurricanes all the time? Do they have wildfires and earthquakes and what have you? So like once you start narrowing this down, you probably still end up with 5 to 10 different markets that kind of make sense. And that's when I said, okay, real estate in the end, it is still a people business. It involves your tenant, it involves your PM. It can involve a partner if you decide to partner up with the people. And that's when I said, okay, there are these different markets that are interesting. Let me go networking and find who are the people who are running in these markets and whether we can find mutual fit and go after deals together. So that's kind of how that journey has slowly evolved from just me going at it by myself in single families and now working with partners to buy multifamilies in the Midwest market.
I love that. I really want to point out a couple of things that Jason mentioned that I think is such key. I love that you start with data first. thinking about the population, thinking about employment. And I think that's something that I don't think a lot of people mention is that diversity of employment is so important, right? You want a market where the employment is not solely based on one or two industry, and specifically even industry that may be very seasonal or may not be as stable, right? So for a lot of us in real estate, we obviously love tech, we love healthcare, we love education. Those are always great industries. So I love that you mentioned that diversity employment. I love that you mentioned the climate risk. I think that's what a lot of investors left out of their picking the market. And with climate risk, what it affects is your insurance, of course. And it also affects where people really stay, right? If you're in a market that constantly flood, at some point people can really just go through so many of that experience before they're like, that's it, I'm out of here, right? So it can create some pocket of vacancy in cities that have a lot of floods. So I really love that you mentioned the climate risk. And then I love when you mentioned about then finding that advantage, because at some point, if you Google top real estate market to invest in, you're going to find the same maybe 10, 20 markets. And by the time that you find that 10 to 20 markets, other people also find that 10 to 20 markets. And to your point, Jason, it's very competitive. So I love that you mentioned about then finding the people, finding the partners that become your advantage to then start investing in those markets. So great things that you mentioned and very actionable strategic tips that people can think about doing that. So you mentioned about kind of starting to find partners in different market that you then starting to partner with. Is that when you start the multifamily side, or is that when you start the single family as well?
Multifamily.
Got it. So a lot of us invest in the real estate for the cash flow to either supplement our W-2 income or to replace our W-2 income. And yes, at some point, if you calculate that in single family, you're going to be like, okay, how many transactions do I have to do? And 50 single family is still 50 transactions. That is a lot to do. Financing, finding the deal, underwriting, all of that. So I love that you start pivoting into multifamily. Tell us a bit more about how you break into that in terms of starting from the LP side and then going into the GP side and what your roles are.
Yeah, so the pivot from LP to GP, I think, really started with networking and really getting a better grasp of how underwriting works in multifamily and how to operate. I get that part of learning is always learning on the job, but I think at least speak the lingo on the back end before you do the real exercise. That's just as important. And more importantly, just learn from people who have been in the trenches and learn from the true operational experience based instead of whatever's written on paper, right? So I think it all started with networking and just figuring out, okay, what are the things to do and what not to do. And then throughout these networking sessions, we might be looking at deals live together. We might be underwriting deals together. You kind of get a feel of how the person looks at multifamily as a business and what their personalities are. And that we're really looking for synergy in the personalities, in the values, and the ethics. Do they say what they're going to do? Do they do what they do? And do they back it up? Or are they all talk and there's no substance to it, right? So I think those are all super important. I think my journey in finding the partners really involved, again, starting from just online networking over Zoom. But eventually I still flew to their markets and really got to meet them face to face. And I think there's always more to it when you meet a person live. There's a lot of in-person dynamics that are missed from the Zoom calls. So once you get to meet a person face to face, you get a much better feel of what is it like working with this person? What is it like talking about deals with them? What is it like having lunch with them? Like, do I even get along with this person, right? So I think after checking those boxes off, then you kind of get a feel of whether you can have a long-term business relationship with the person. And that's when you can really take a next step and say, okay, let's really go after deals more aggressively and see where that takes us. I think I would keep coming back to the people component because in the end, this is still a people business.
Absolutely.
Like as partners, you're definitely leaning on each other's strength and try to supplement each other's weaknesses so that you have a very well-rounded team that can handle whatever is in your way. So in the end, people. One mistake I made at the beginning of the LP investing journey was not networking earlier enough. So I made investment decisions solely based on what I read from the internet and the quote unquote self-education, which I thought was enough. But I think talking to people who are operating, that made a huge difference. So I think can't emphasize enough, just go out there, get yourself out there, go network, whether it's a local meetup or a paid community. If you choose to do that, just talk to people who are operating properties.
Yeah, those are all excellent and important points. I love your stress about people, right? Finding that core value, the complementary of skills, that ethics. And I think that's really important that you get to know your partners over multiple ways. For a lot of us who may not grow up around people who do real estate, right? You mentioned you find partners through, was it social media, online groups? Tell us more about that steps.
Yeah, that was actually from a real estate community called Jake and Gino. A lot of aspiring real estate entrepreneurs who got together, and that was a forum for us to network.
Okay, so you find essentially communities that can meet virtually, and it is specifically about multifamily because you're looking to grow in multifamily. So you guys met virtually, underwriting deals, go through deal, and then go ahead and meet in person. And I love that you share that, right? Because just like you said, you get to know people, people get to know you as well, right? And how you operate. So I think that really create a good partnership. What people may not think about is a couple of things, right? I hear a lot about, hey, I don't have time. I don't have this. I would love to find partners. How do I find partners? So what you share there is super crucial. And second thing I heard is like, how do I trust my partners? And so I love that you share about how the trust is not just built over one phone call, but it takes a lot of conversation, a lot of actual like underwriting skills together.
It's also important to have the hard conversations first as early as possible.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think about how long partnership and deals can last. So having that hard conversation and upfront is crucial. Thank you so much for bringing that up. So tell us more about your role in this syndication or multifamily deals and how did you kind of find out about your skill set? Like this is the role that I'm going to gravitate towards.
Yeah, sure. So I work different hats between different syndication deals. There's a capital raiser hat, there's the asset manager hat, and the underwriter. But primarily, I spend most of my time as the asset manager. And I think that ties to my skill sets just pretty naturally because my background is in engineering. It's all about looking at numbers and figuring out the whys behind the whys, right? And be able to connect different dots. I view asset manager as the person who is responsible to execute the business plan. So before you acquire a property, you will have a set of underwriting projections. It's going to get this much rent and become a certain dollar amount in a few years. Asset managers are supposed to be looking at the financials, understanding what's happening to the property, why certain expenses are incurred, and ways that we can push the income and reduce expenses. And really just stay a couple of steps ahead to really mitigate issues that may come up. It can be large number of vacancies. You can be looking at market reports and seeing what's happening in your market. Is this a local specific problem or is this systemic across the entire market? So I think as an asset manager, one of my partner put it really well was asset managers are kind of like detectives. Like you put on a detective hat, you turn every stone and you ask the right questions and connect the dots and be able to piece together a story. And more importantly, identify actions that needs to be taken to get to execute your business plan. So I think naturally that just fits well with my personality and my skill set. So I think from the very early on, I kind of knew that in a multifamily partnership, I will be spending a lot of time wearing the underwriter and the asset manager hat.
Awesome. And those are very great complementary skills because just like you said, during the underwriting, you have this set of assumptions on how you would operate the property. So it's very important that you get the asset manager involved during the underwriting because there's nothing worse than like, hey, here's how it's going to operate. And the asset manager is like, no, that is not how we're going to operate. So I love that you'll be able to do both of that role. One thing you brought up that I thought is very important for the audience to note is that your background in aero engineering, those are some very transferable skills for you into this role as asset manager. So for the audience who's listening, right, you may have a lot of transferable skills that you built up in your W-2 that you can take with you for whatever you decide to do in this wealth building journey outside W-2. Because a lot of people feel like they're starting from scratch, but you're never starting from scratch, right? You have skills that you're bringing. And so it's very important that you transfer those skills over. Give the audience a little bit advice, tips on how you balance both between this W-2 and building wealth outside of W-2.
This is not in any particular order, but I think setting a routine, this will force you to separate your W-2 responsibilities and whatever aspirations you have in real estate or whatever industry and whatever commitments you have outside of work, whether it is family, kids, whatever. So set a routine. And the benefit of that is when you do a certain thing at a certain time, your brain gets into a zone much more effortlessly. And as soon as you throw in distraction, it will take you at least twice or three times as much time to get back to where you were and just recapture that chain of thought. So setting a routine and make sure you stay focused in whatever you have to do during that time. I guess time blocking is how some people call it. Another thing I'll say is say no. That applies to both at work, unfortunately, and also to whatever it is you're pursuing. But saying no in whatever you're pursuing also means limit chasing the shiny objects. Like as we dig into the real estate realm, it's going to be the short-term rental, the long-term rental, the multi, the triple net, industrial, what have you, right? So pick something that you really resonate with and stick to it and minimize chasing the shiny objects as much as possible. I think these two are probably the two things that come up immediately right now. There's probably more, but we'll keep up.
I love that. I love what you share about the time blocking and kind of be able to switch tasks. Honestly, I think that skill set is important, whether you're building a wealth outside of W-2 or once you're a full-time entrepreneur. I'm finding myself still fine-tuning that skill set because right now I do have different projects. And so how do I identify and prioritize which one to do? Love what you said about saying no.
It's a hard thing to do. Yeah, it's hard.
It is. It is a hard thing to do. I think everybody consider what to say yes to, but I do think that skill set of choosing what to say no to is just as important, if not more important.
One more thing, I think at the beginning, you will still need to understand what direction you're going into, meaning you say the targets and the values, and those are going to be your guiding principles. And then saying no's and time blocking are just ways to limit the noise so you can stay focused on whatever you have identified already, whether it's a dollar amount or a time frame, whatever it is. So identify what it is that you're going after and the whys.
I love that you mentioned the why as the compass to measure everything. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to switch gear a bit and talk more about your multifamily and asset management experience. I'm in multifamily too, and I agree that asset manager is such an important role. It takes a long time and you follow the property for the whole 3, 5, 7 years, however long that. And I always say that the idea that a property is stabilized is always a myth because as an asset manager, we always tinker things a little bit, always to improve the property. So I feel like the work is never done. Give the audience a little bit about some of the key things that you do as asset manager that you have found is super helpful to manage the business plan of a property. Give us maybe a set of KPIs that you always look at, or maybe some tips and tricks that people can take away as they manage their own portfolio.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, KPIs. Let's talk about KPIs. Definitely a certain metrics that we track regularly. And those are just the indicators that you know right off the bat where something is wrong and you can just divert your attention to. So maintaining a key set of KPIs is super important. That can include occupancy. And more recently, we started paying a lot more attention to the leasing conversion funnel. We have a lot of these, but why are we not converting as many of them as we can, right? And those are all missed opportunities that we can do better on. So it's all about not only tracking the numbers, but reading beyond what the numbers are telling you and identify the opportunities. So asset management is not copy and pasting numbers and just take whatever reported values granted and given and not question them. Our job is to question what these numbers are telling us. And our job is to ensure we can derive insights that will allow us to stay on the business plan, which is whatever number we'll put down in underwriting. And also a pretty important piece of that is to really understand and follow the story of the property. And that can be done either by just talking to the team and the PM regularly. It can also be done by just digging into the property management system. We use Appfolio. So I'm in Appfolio all the time, clicking through expenses and understanding why do we have this expense? Is it justifiable? Is it even classified correctly? Are there ways we can cut down this expense in the future? So those are the things that I'm building up in my mental model. Basically understand the genesis of the property operation and understand where are the tweaks needed to get to where it needs to be.
Love it. And I think for the audience, you can apply this to whatever you do, right? Whether it's your own portfolio or even your day-to-day. I think just having a key set of numbers that you know would move the needles. What Jason explained, essentially what numbers would really tell the story. Right now, you have your W-2, you have a couple assets that you're in. Tell us more about what your goals and plans are for the multifamily investing side.
Yeah, we did a few deals last year. So this year's focus has really been running good operations and making sure those properties are stabilized and there are no major surprises. Most of them are older properties, so we kind of knew going in, we'll have some work to do. And right now, it's really to make sure we do the work that we anticipated and make sure surprises are minimized, especially entering this time of the year when we are like at the end of October. We're heading into winter season. We want to make sure we keep the properties full as much as possible and just get through the winter. And once spring turns around, we can start thinking about pushing rent and execute the value add strategy. So I would say that's been the main focus for this year, just staying lean in operations and run the properties well.
I love what you share about going into winter. We also in that process as well. Just figuring out occupancy, making sure everything is filled because nobody wants to move around the holidays. How are you managing a lot of these from afar? Any tips on kind of managing the PM or managing the asset actually from afar?
So luckily, most of the information lives in Appfolio. It should look in whatever property management system that you use. So it's really looking at the information that's in the tool and really think critically about, again, what the numbers are telling you, what kind of stories are telling you. Another piece of that is, as asset managers, we do market research regularly, monthly, quarterly, but you're looking at the competitors all the time. And that information is on Zillow or apartments.com, right? You can do that anywhere, right? You can kind of track what people are charging. Do they have the same unit types and do they have the same level of renovation? Does the community feel better or worse? Where you can make those comparisons and make your best judgment on where you should be setting the rents, right? There are other AI tools like Hello Data that allows you to track your competitors automatically and see what they're marketing the rents at and what they actually closed on. So you can tell whether people are offering increasing concession or are they getting what they are marketing, right? So there are tools that you can implement and just add to your war chest to really make informed decisions on your property.
Awesome. I think that's great tips that you share how just because you're far away, right, doesn't mean you can't. You do need boots on the ground. So in this case, Jason, I'm assuming you have third party property management company who are boots on the ground. And then your goal at that point is making sure the numbers are aligned with your business plan and then figure out problem solving, troubleshooting from there.
I think like when you're sitting from behind a computer, there's only so much information you can learn about a property. And it's always super important to talk to the property manager or whoever's boots on the ground and get their in-person feedback. Right? We have an instance where one of our units is taking a while to rent, but we felt the price was right. But then the feedback we got was the bedroom size is a little bit too small from the number of showings that we had. That is not something you can immediately tell from just looking at data. So getting that in person, real-time feedback, I think that's just as important. And again, it ties back to the people component. Like this is a people business, again, your tenants, your PMs, your partners, and everyone.
Tell us a bit more kind of what your cadence looks like right now within your partnership. Now that you guys are doing deals together, do you guys meet often? How do you guys maintain the partnership and ensuring you guys are moving in the same direction?
Yeah, so we have regular calls between all the partners and just to align on what we're seeing on the property. Are there any fires that need to be put out? Are there any upcoming tasks that we need someone's attention? Maybe it's an inspection coming up that someone boots on the ground needs to attend to. Are we going to be submitting bank draws? So we talk about that kind of stuff on a regular basis. But it is also just ad hoc texting and calling. Like we don't have to wait a week to do that. Once you see something that needs attention, just pick up the phone. So I think it's just maintaining that constant communication. On some weeks, we will talk like 4 to 5 times a week. On a different week, we might only talk once. So it really depends on what attention is needed on the property. So that varies.
That's awesome. How many markets are you guys in?
Currently 2, Kansas City and Cincinnati.
Got it. Are you guys consider growing more in those 2 or you guys consider maybe pivoting? What's your mindset or thoughts around those?
Certainly growing. Right now, the properties that we acquired last year, they are in a good spot. There's definitely more income that we can squeeze out of it. We've lent the property for almost a year. We know what to expect. So our goal is always to continue to grow, but we also want to be cognizant about buying right, and especially like buying the right property in the right location and not just buy everything, especially considering all the economic uncertainty that we currently have, the weak jobs data, and whatever that might come our way. So just buying carefully, buying right, and then manage it right.
Awesome. And I know you're in multifamily for a few years. So like tell us if your multifamily investment strategy might have changed. And if so, what are some of those I think you're adjusting based on the current state of the multifamily market?
Yeah. So when I initially got into multifamily, I was focused on cash flow. I think in the last couple of years, I realized multifamily is just another way to preserve and grow capital. I guess having your equity multiple is just as important. And this will depend on where the person is in your life journey, right? Like I'm still in my mid 30s, so I can afford to not have too much cash flow now and focus on growing the equity and then later just convert the equity into cash flow. So I think my mindset has definitely shifted from cash flow heavy plays to a hybrid model. I like a blend of cash flow and growth.
I love it. And I love what you share there, also thinking about what kind of returns you want, depend on where you're at in your life. And you have a W-2, you're in your mid 30, and so you're willing to essentially trade off some of the cash flow for that appreciation later on. And so I think that's something very key for the audience to think about, right? You consider investing, right? You're not spending time with your family into investing for just because. So what Jason said there about starting with that goal, whether you're looking for appreciation or cash flow, really determine where you want to invest, what type of asset you want to invest in. And I think sometimes that's the perks of passive investing is that you don't have to stick all your cash into one market, one deal that is strictly appreciation or strictly cash flow. You can essentially spread out whatever you want to invest in over multiple different deals, multiple different market, and be able to get a good mix of both appreciation and cash flow depends on what you're looking for.
I actually want to add a point on that.
Yeah.
You mentioned diversifying different markets, and a lot of Sunbelt markets across Dallas and Texas and Florida have seen a lot of growth in the past years, but it also have gotten hit with huge supply waves. And if you follow the multifamily industry, you might see like headlines on foreclosures in Texas. What we're seeing is there is a value reset on a lot of these markets, meaning that you can buy quality assets for 20% off, 25% off, which is a good deal. So recognizing that these market cycles, they come in waves and recognizing where each market is at during the market cycle can also shape your investment strategy. So one of my goals for next year is to try to pick up a property for an attractive cost basis in Dallas. And that is just because Dallas is now in a down cycle and hopefully emerging in a year or two. And that is where you can really find long-lasting value in these market cycles.
Yeah, national news are very broad.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can hear really a lot of bad news across the US. But to your point, understand real estate investing is hyper local. And so each market will be in its own cycle. Circle back to what Jason said at the beginning is that there has to be the strong fundamental there. So to your point, Dallas, their fundamentals are very strong. So which is why when the price is going down, right, you never know if it's continuing to go down or is coming back up. And it's very hard to time that piece per se, but this is when you just notice like, hey, you still get a discount and you have buying in a strong fundamental market. And yeah, I think it's great that you can invest in multiple different market. Key point to what Jason suggests there is to focus, right? He did not just go ahead and grow in 3 different markets at the same time. He focused on a certain market first and then continue to expand to other market when he has built team in place in certain market. So if you already have a market that you're comfortable with, definitely consider expanding so that you can take advantage of different returns and different cycles in different market. But if you're starting out, right, consider growing, focusing all in one market first, building your team, building your asset there, get comfortable with it, really know the market well before you consider expanding out. If you're passive investing, you can choose whichever market. You don't have to wait because you don't have to get to know the team, get to know the market. You do have to know the people you invest with, just like what Jason said, right? Getting to know that upfront and just don't see marketing on social media, all that stuff before you consider investing. With that, I would love to switch to a mystery question.
Okay.
So the mystery question is a question that was left behind by our previous guest. And your mystery question is, if you could pass on one mindset lesson to the next generation of leaders, what would it be?
Well, that's pretty specific, leaders. There are many that come to mind, but I think quality before quantity. I've been in a startup all my life, and we're always about fast iteration, build stuff, test it, break it, and repeat, right? But I think in this day and age, quality is something that one should never compromise. It doesn't matter how fast you can churn out products. If doing a fast iteration cycle is what's needed to design a high quality product, sure. But don't just crank out stuff for the sake of delivering something. Make sure it has to be high quality.
That's interesting. Quality over quantity. Okay, I'll keep thinking about that. That's very interesting. Awesome. Jason, thank you so much for being here today. Tell the audience how they can continue to find out more about your journey, get in touch with you.
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram. It's jason.h.rei, or you can email me at jason@formosaequity.com. That's one word, Formosa Equity.
Awesome. And we'll include all that in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here today, Jason. Really appreciate you sharing with us your journey and your expertise. Until next time.
Yeah, thanks.